A cue sheet, or cue file, is a metadata file which describes how the tracks of a CD or DVD are laid out. Cue sheets are stored as plain text files and commonly have a cue file name extension. CDRWIN first introduced cue sheets, which are now supported by many optical disc authoring applications and media players. Overview: cue sheets can describe many types of audio and data CDs. The main data for a CD described by a cue sheet is stored in one or more files referenced by the cue sheet. Cue sheets also specify track lengths, and CD text including track and disc titles and performers. They are especially useful when dividing audio stored in a single file into multiple songs or tracks. The data files referred to by the cue sheet may be audio files, or plain disk images, usually with a bin extension. When used for disk images, the format is usually called cue bin, indicating that it stores a disk image composed of one cue sheet file and one or more bin files. The bin files are sector-by-sector binary copies of tracks in the original disks. These binary bin files usually contain all 2,352 bytes from each sector in an optical disc, including control headers and error correction data in the case of CD-ROMs. However, the track command in a cue sheet file can be used to refer to binary disk images that contain only the user data of each sector, by indicating the specific CD mode of the tracks from which the image was created. The name cue sheet originates from the send cue sheet SCSIATA command in optical disc authoring. The specification for that command defines a cue sheet format containing mostly the same information, but in a tabular, binary data structure, rather than a text file. Audio file playback: an entire multi-track audio CD may be ripped to a single audio file and a cue sheet. However, software audio players and hardware digital audio players often treat each audio file as a single playlist entry, which can make it difficult to select and identify the individual tracks. A common solution is to split the original audio file into a series of separate files, one per track. Another approach is for the audio player to support the cue sheet directly. This may involve providing a new playlist for the contents of the cue sheet, or adding an entry for each track directly into the main playlist. Cue sheet syntax: a cue sheet is a plain text file containing commands with one or more parameters. The commands usually apply either to the whole disk or to an individual track, depending on the particular command and the context. They may describe the layout of data to be written, or CD text. The original specification of the cue sheet syntax and semantics appears in the CDRWIN user guide. The standard commands are: essential commands, file, names a file containing the data and its format. Track, defines a track context, providing its number and type or mode. Some commands that follow this command apply to the track rather than the entire disk. Index, indicates an index within the current file. The position is specified in SSFF format. There are 75 such frames per second of audio. In the context of cue sheets, frames refer to CD sectors, despite a different, lower-level structure in CDs also being known as frames. Index 01 is required and denotes the start of a track, while Index 00 is optional and denotes the pregap. The pregap of track 1 is used for hidden track 1 audio. Optional higher numbered indexes are also allowed. Pregap and postgap indicates the length of a track's pregap or postgap, which is not stored in any data file. The length is specified in the same minute second frame format as for index. CD text and other metadata commands, rem, adds a comment that usually has no bearing on the written CD at all, with the exception of some applications that use it to store additional metadata. Text file, identifies a file containing CD text information. Flags, sets subcode flags of a track. Catalog, contains the UPCEAN code of the disk. ISRC, define the ISRC of the current track. Title, performer and songwriter, CD text metadata. Applies to the whole disk or a specific track, depending on the context. Non-standard cue sheets. CD ripping programs normally offer the option of creating a separate file for each audio track, with the gap portion of a track placed at the end of the preceding track's file. This coincides with normal playback operation. The beginning of each file is the beginning of a track, not the gap preceding it. And with the layout described in the disk's table of contents, which doesn't specify gap information at all. The Q-sheet format, as specified in the CDRWIN user's manual, doesn't support file sets of this type. Rather, it's designed with the expectation that all of the audio data exists in a single file or in separate files, but only with the gap portions of the audio either removed or placed at the beginning of the files. In order to allow Q-sheets to be used to burn a CD from ordinary file sets which have the gap portion at the end of each file, the CD ripping and burning program Exact Audio Copy allows the creation of Q-sheets that relax the CDRWIN user's manual's restriction on where file commands can be used. This non-conforming Q-sheet format, intended only for burning CDs with EAC, isn't supported by some other pieces of software, such as the media player for BAR 2000, which allows to use Q-sheets as playlists. Examples: the MP3 file Faithless, Live in Berlin MP3, contains a live recording of the band Faithless. At this concert, Faithless performed 8 songs in the order shown below. Therefore, the track listing is as follows: Faithless Reverence, Faithless She's My Baby, Faithless Take the Long Way Home, Faithless Insomnia, Faithless Bring the Family Back, Faithless Salva May, Faithless Dirty Old Man, Faithless God is a DJ. Since the MP3 is one file containing the entire performance, burning it to a CD as would make it inconvenient to skip to individual songs. To design the Q-sheet, one must first find the points in the MP3 at which each song starts. The times are cumulative, each track must have a later time than the previous one. The first 3 lines denote the disk information. This is followed by the information for each track, indented from the rest. The index 01 line reads the same for each track, with the exception of the time value that follows it. Rem, title and performer are optional. An example of a Q-sheet used in conjunction with a CD image file. See also, comparison of audio player software metadata ability, comparison of video player software metadata ability, comparison of disk authoring software, Exact Audio Copy a proprietary CD ripping program, Music Braille's Picard a cross-platform Music Braille's tag editor written in Python, MP3 SPLT an open-source digital audio splitter, XSPF an XML-based playlist format for digital media. References. External links: Q-sheet section of digital.org website, Q-sheet page on the Hydrogen Audio Knowledge Base website.